What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'm Dan Besbris, your host. You can find me on social at Dan Besbris. Complicated, I know. DanBesbris. You can follow Old Man Squad, our network feed at Old Man Squad. That'll be my show and all of the other podcasts. There's something like almost 20 other shows on the network already. So please do drop those a follow on social. And remember, take a second here at the beginning to hit that like button. Hit that like button. Rate if you're following on after the fact, or subscribe no matter how you're taking in the content. Welcome to the show. Today, because Yahoo redid their board earlier this week, we got to go through the damn names again and figure out who's a value and who's not, because a lot of it has changed. Today, we're going 26 through 50. And that worked pretty well last time. We did 25 at a time on these shows. And then finally, after we hit 100, we got into the sleepers, the very late grabs. So we'll work our way through that as well. Today, we can just go ahead and dive right in. We'll pick up at number 25. That player on the Yahoo board is none other than LeBron James. Fun place to start, I think, don't you? LeBron finished last year at number 18 on a per game basis. Small shift for him over the last table move. He went from 22 down to 26. So LeBron actually going in the negative direction and went from what I thought was a relatively safe pick at 22 to a pick with maybe even a little tiny bit of upside built in at 26. Not a lot. The difference between 22 and 26 is minimal. But there is a certain difference in how people are looking at the board. Basically, what that means is if you're sitting in a draft and someone's turn is coming up, like around, end of the second round, LeBron's name is going to be up near the top of the board. And if he's at 26, his name is just going to be a little bit farther down. There's going to be some other guys slotted in there, like we talked about on the last show. And so it's going to, whether we like it or not, this is just the way it works. It's going to change where he gets drafted a little bit. I do personally think that LeBron takes a small step back this season. I don't know how he shoots 54% from the field again with all these extra three-pointers, but maybe he can replicate that. Either way, you do have the relatively safe floor of he's LeBron. He's not going to just not do stuff. Yes, he's old as hell, and that's probably the downside built in, but I don't mind him at all at pick 26. In fact, I almost kind of a little bit like it. Lauri Markkanen at pick number 27 on the new board. He is also a risk, but for different reasons. Not because he's old as dirt, but because he's on a team that's not really competitive. Markkanen played in 55 games last season. He was in the 60s the year before that. I believe it was 66 was the final number. Hovered between 20 and 12 each of the last two seasons. Just a very, very strong per game guy. So to that end, getting him at 27, you are getting a bump. The per game, he'll beat it. But the games played is where the question mark comes in. So games cap roto, provided you haven't taken a massive risk already, like a Joel Embiid, Lauri Markkanen in the beginning of the third round is still fine. He moved up a little bit at the last board shift from 32 to 27, so it eliminates a little bit of the joy. But I still think he's playable with the games cap. Without a games cap, this is a little bit of a scary spot for him because taking into account totals rank versus per game rank, last season, Markkanen finished at number 51. Yeah, you heard that right. 51 by totals. That's nowhere near where we'd need him to be. If Markkanen can get to 65 or 66 games, he definitely gets to this mark by totals. But we don't know if he's going to. We feel pretty comfortable in saying he'll be playing at most about 68 ball games. So then it comes down to how much he misses beyond the sort of last 3 to 4 week shutdown stretch. And we don't know. We're taking a little bit of a stab. We don't know how many times he's going to have a sore knee or a sore back or need to take a half of a back-to-back off or whatever. But in all likelihood, you're looking at probably low 60s as a reasonable guess. Anything above that, you call it a win on games played. Anything below that, it's not that crazy. You call it a little bit of a loss. 27 is a fair spot for Markkanen, but if you're worried at all about the injury stuff, and certainly on the head-to-head side, you should be, he's probably a guy you think about passing over. Tyrese Maxey is the next name on the board at number 28. He went down, which is what needed to happen. He was too high on the first board. Maxey was 19. Now he's at 28, and he's a very fair play at 28. Maxey was number 19 last year. He's going to lose some stuff to Paul George. From 20 shots a game, that's going to have to come down a little bit. We don't know exactly how much. I think if we reasonably assume that Maxey takes a 2 to 2.5 shot per game hit, that does hurt him because the free throw number comes down, the scoring comes down, the threes come down, all of that stuff comes down. He could get perhaps a little bit more efficient at the field goal percent number, and maybe that covers a little bit of it. But in all likelihood, he's going to take a small step back. But a round is a pretty fair amount to jump or bounce. And so from 19 dropping to about 31 is probably a reasonable assessment. And that's around where he's getting drafted right now. So Maxey, very much a fair play. Dejounte Murray is another player who went down in the latest board shift. Dejounte needed to go down in the latest board shift. He was previously at 24. He's now down at 29. And I don't think that's far enough. Dejounte Murray was number 38 in 9-cat last year. Both percentages, believe it or not, were negative. Steals were pretty good at 1.4. You could hope that they get higher, but you certainly can't bank on them getting higher. You can assume the field goal number probably comes down. Assists, rebounds, maybe that stuff sticks. Maybe it doesn't. Hard to say for sure. But a usage drop-off is generally a bad thing. So I'm going to treat it as a bad thing here and say that mid-30s is kind of the absolute best-case scenario, unless Pelicans get hurt or traded or whatever. So I don't want Dejounte Murray at 29. He's one of my least favorite plays in this range, and we can keep going. Kawhi Leonard at number 30. He's one of the biggest early round leapers in the latest Yahoo board shift. He moves from 45, where he had no business being, all the way up to 30. And now you start to get into the, is it worth it or not? Because at 45, the question wasn't even out there. It was definitely worth it. It really didn't matter how many games you thought Kawhi was going to play this season when you're drafting him in the 4th round with a guy that could, you guys heard my hot take is that he's going to be a top 4 per game guy. But I think at worst for Kawhi, you're talking top 7 per game. And so now you're doing the math. If he plays 55 games, does he beat this? Yeah, he actually probably does. 55 games likely beats this. I think we can still get 55 games out of Kawhi. I think the Clippers are going to be hunting. I don't know that they're going to be safely in the playoffs, so they're going to need him to play if he can play. He's fantastic. His per-game numbers are going to get better with no Paul George. Maybe, does the field goal percent come down at all? I don't know. I think maybe this is just sort of who he is now. He's over 50% from the field. 55 games is a win. Anything above that is a huge win. Maybe he gets to 60. Maybe he gets to 62. And I get it. Drafting a guy in the 3rd round where you're hoping for 62 ball games is a tough pill to swallow. But think of it this way. Joel Embiid, a lot of folks are willing to take it 9, 10, 11, myself included, hoping for 62 games to get him into that small win neighborhood. Kawhi, you can get 25 slots deeper. It's a different stat set, I know, but it's the same general calculation. I say take the risk here instead of the 1st round if you can. And, we'll wait and see what his ADP does with this board shuffle. But I don't think he's going much earlier than early 3rd round. You should be able to get him in the 3rd. JJJ at number 31. He didn't move much over the last board, so we don't need to recap him too much. This is probably a fair spot for him. I remain, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again, I remain sad because I thought he was going to get drafted in the 40s this year, and I was going to take him there. In the 30s, you sort of got the low floor, high ceiling kind of thing. I don't really like super polarizing fantasy lines because we don't know exactly which JJJ we're going to get this season. 1.6 blocks a game or 3. It's a huge difference. You're talking like 100 blocks. That's a game-changing number. And if you get him on the good year, congratulations, that's everything. But if you don't, well, you spent a pick on a guy that ended up being basically a shooting guard's fantasy line and a power forward's center's body. Scoring went up. Assists went up. Pretty much everything went down other than those last year. His role is going to get much smaller with John Morant back and Bane around for the whole year and Smart around for the whole year and all that stuff. So shots are going to go down, scoring is going to go down, assists are going to go down, threes are going to go down, free throws are going to go down. The hope is that blocks double and compensate for that, but we don't know that that's going to be the case. I don't like to draft guys where it's a lot of like, will it, won't it? Pass. Alperen Sengun at 32. That's also a pass for me. This is way early. He was already relatively early, I thought, at number 41. But you could certainly make a very fair and reasonable case that if you were punting free throws last year, Sengun was well worth it in that range. He was number 24 in a punt free throw build. And now you basically have to draft him just behind that. If he fixes his foul stroke, I don't know if anybody's ever called it that before. If he fixes his free throw percentage, then he moves up into this range in 9 category leagues without a punt. If he doesn't, then he's a punt guy. So there's your calculation. Punting free throws, have at it, because that's a pretty safe play. If you're not, it's not safe. 71%, 21.5 2 years ago, 69 this last year. Like, it could bounce around. It could get worse. It could come back up a little bit. The county stats are huge. We know that. But that free throw is the thing that's kind of hanging over it. Will you or won't you? Personally, I would rather go with someone who I don't have to worry about a punt in this range, but I also get it. If you're already into a free throw punt build, then he's solid. Cade Cunningham at number 33. He didn't move much. He did move up, though. He's in mid-30s before. Actually, 30-80. So he moved up 5 slots. And he'll go here. Cade was going at a fine time anyway. So there's a lot of handicapping stuff to try to figure out around Cade Cunningham. He was number 72 during the final 3 months last year. He was number 42 over the last 20 games last year on 24.5 points, 5 boards, 7.5 assists, 2.5 threes. Very low defensive stats, outstanding free throw, and kind of middling field goal percent. And it's sort of hard to know what Cade we're going to get. As his year before, where he only played 12 games, and then he had the foot thing and held him out the whole year. He shot 41.5%. But the steals and blocks were a little bit better. This year, the blocks completely vanished. The steals were not that different, I guess, but also not particularly impressive. And that's a thing that I think we were kind of hoping he would have more of, which, you go back a couple of seasons, he had 1.2 steals a game, 2021, 2022 year. So it's in there. I'm hoping that was his rookie season. I'm hoping we can get back somewhere in that neck of the woods because they've been down. Blocks have been down. And that's how Cade gets to that next rung, is defensive stats coming back around a little bit. I'm hoping for 1.5 to 2 combined instead of the 1 to 1.5 range. I don't think it's asking for all that much. You could see the usage come down a tiny bit, but I don't think it's going to be all that different. The guys that the Pistons brought in are not create your own shot guys. Tobias Harris is going to be largely playing off the ball. Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley, these guys are gunners. Cade's still going to be the guy that has to get them the basketball. So the counting stats should stay mostly intact. Maybe you see the scoring comes down a little bit. But assists should stay all right. And then so that you're hoping for a little bit more in the defensive zone. Maybe turnovers come down. I don't know. In terms of drafting at 33, I think he's a little bit of a build guy. Maybe 8-cat is the build. But you also might not care that much about turnovers. So not that insane here. He's probably not a guy that I'm targeting, but not that insane. Jalen Johnson at 34 could be a fun one. This is a guy who's currently priced at what folks want him to become this season. And I always worry a little bit about, needing guys to take the next jump after they already took one big one. But at the same time, the deck is clear in Atlanta. They got rid of Dejounte Murray. Jalen Johnson is now, at least in most of our eyes, sort of the clear number 2 guy in the starting unit. And then you'll have Bogdan Bogdanovic probably jacking up shots, and they'll get some other young guys involved. But Jalen Johnson was a top 45 guy last year as the 3rd, 4th, 5th, sort of like this combined high mega fiddle combined with Bogdan and DeAndre Hunter and all these other guys. But he now has an opportunity to separate himself, to go up and be the number 2, to be a guy taking 14, 15 shots per game instead of a dozen. Throw more usage at Jalen Johnson. That's a good thing. That's more points, threes, assists, positive field goal percent. Yeah, the negative free throw sort of counterbalances that a little bit. But there's a lot to like. He only played 56 games last year. That's perhaps one little red flag. Can he make it through this season unscathed? But you can very easily see the outlines of a guy that moves up a half to a full round year over year. Yeah, you price him out a little bit in this range at 34 as a late third. He's not going to go too far beyond that, but he'll be fun. Cat at 35 is extraordinarily safe. Cat's not a guy that I'm going into any drafts trying to collect, but he was number 44 last year, and it just ain't going to get much worse than that. He's a great percentages center who lost his center stuff when Rudy Gobert came around. The upside with Cat is, does Gobert miss any time? The downside is, does Cat miss a bunch of time, which he basically has for like 3 or 4 seasons running now. Missed 20 games again this last year, but again, he ain't going to be worse than top 50. So you take him here, you're like, all right, I got the safe floor. And you could make the same argument. I didn't even put Cat's face on the screen for YouTubers, but you could pretty much make the same argument for Bam Adebayo, who's right behind him at number 36. Cat last year was number 44. Bam was number 51. These are both high floor, low ceiling big men, where Bam does a little bit more defensively and Cat does a little bit more offensively. Easy. Easy peasy. Bam could be a better free throw shooter this coming season, too. You could see that from 75 go up to, 78, 79. And that would move him up a half round. And these two dudes might end up just deadlocked, like right at 45, both of them. And that's okay. That makes them relatively safe plays in this range. Let's take a very brief stoppage for a commercial break. After Bam Adebayo is Paolo Banchero, and I can't get over this one. I just, no matter how many folks keep telling me I need to soften my stance, I'm not softening my stance on Paolo. He is a good young basketball player and might become a great young basketball player, but I just cannot bank on him fixing all 3 of his massive deficiencies at once. 1, maybe 2, probably not, but all 3? I don't care if he's young. I don't care if he's still improving, which all of those are true. Also, second of all, he's not a great defensive stats guy. So, that's not going to save him. But last year, he took 17.5 shots per game. I mean, that could, I guess, if the Magic want to go more towards Paolo, that could get up to 18.5. Like, you could see a little bit more usage. Not a lot, but a little. But the free throw percent actually went down first to second year. Field goal percent came up a little bit. 3-point percent came up a little bit. 2-point percent came up a little bit. So the learning curve is happening, but he's a high turnovers, low free throw, low field goal guy who doesn't get that many defensive stats. Not like atrociously bad, but also not, again, that thing that's going to lift him. So you need a lot of points and boards and assists to go get a player who basically has Kyle Kuzma's fantasy game, but is getting drafted 5 rounds sooner. I don't want either of those guys on a 9-cat team, but I sure as hell would rather have Kuzma in the 80s than Paolo in the 30s. And I get it. You guys are going to tell me Paolo's better than Kuzma. Yeah, it's true. But I ain't looking at reality. I'm looking at fantasy right now. So, nope. Apologies to the YouTubers. He's another player whose face I forgot to put up on the board. Next, after Paolo, Freddie VanVleet, who somehow, despite me crowing constantly about how much I love Freddie VanVleet in the end of the 3rd round, has fallen to the beginning of the 4th round. This is exactly what happened last year, but later. VanVleet was getting drafted in the middle of the 3rd round the entire draft season last year, and then 2 weeks before the year started, suddenly Yahoo bumped him down, and he started going near 40 in every draft. He wasn't on the Dan Besbris Old Man Squad list because I made that list with a couple weeks before the season started. But he's the guy that I had the most of on all of my I had like 70% Freddie VanVleet. I had him on almost every team that I could get him. The only spots I didn't was like places where I was picking near the turn, and maybe he didn't make it quite all the way to me in the third round a couple of times. Or maybe if I was picking your, like if I had Nikola Jokic, I probably wasn't going to take him in the third round at 25. I didn't feel like I needed to. I think that happened one time. So there were like 1-2 places where I was like, yeah, I just don't think he's going to land in my lap. But basically every other team, I took him. And he was a huge win. And friends, it's going to happen again. He played 73 games as the number 17 guy in fantasy. Just enjoy it. Live it up. Desmond Bane at number 39. This is a dude who moved down, one of the biggest droppers in the latest Yahoo board. He fell from 27, which was wicked early, to 39, which is a little bit safer. This is close to where he belongs. He was 33 last year, missed half the season, and also played without Ja, so his usage is going to drop. But, one round, something like that. Desmond Bane is going to be a very boring fourth-round pick this year, but he's going to be a totally fine one. So take him near 40 if you want. Absolutely fine. Evan Mobley moves up a tiny bit from, I think it was 43 to 40. Yep, 43 to 40. Got that number right. And this remains fine for Mobley. He's going to be ranked right around number 40. This is where he belongs. If he happens to improve his free throw percentage a little bit, get that 72 up to 74, maybe that's how he gets into the 30s. Totally fair pick here. I'm fine with that one too. People always finish these videos and they're like, Dan, you hate everybody. Nope, that's not true, actually. I'm trying to be very clear that a lot of players are just ranked in a totally fine spot. And in fact, of the guys we've talked about today, the first 5 are not on the screen for me right now, but like JJJ to Mobley, which is a 10-person run. I think Cade is in the right spot. I think Cat Bam is in the right spot. Bane, Mobley are all in the right spot. Sengun is a right spot if you're punting free throws. Jalen Johnson, right spot. I mean, most of these guys I think are ranked fairly accurately, with a few guys that are too low and a few that are too high. That's the way it should be in the early parts. All right, guys, last 10 here on today's show. We're 60% of the way through. Miles Turner at number 41. He took a big jump forward, and that surprised the hell out of me. From 46 to 41, I didn't realize people were that high on Miles Turner this year, because I'm not. Miles Turner was 55 last season. They can run Siakam at the 5 if they need to. They don't have Jalen Smith anymore, so maybe that thins out the front court a little bit. But they still got Isaiah Jackson, even though they never trust him. And for Miles Turner, I don't think they're going to try to get him 32 minutes a game again. That, of course, is the upside. If he gets another 5 minutes a ball game, he jumps back into the second, third round discussion. But, it wasn't like he was hurt all season. They just kept his minutes in check. So this is one that I think is a little bit too high now, is Miles Turner. Too high. Like, taking a look at the last 2 years, the minute per game drop was the big thing for Miles, because the other stuff didn't change that much. He took the same number of shots per game, so he was jacking them up when he was out there. But the blocks went down by basically the number of minutes. You shave it off. Rebounds, the same thing. Rebounds and blocks came down by the percentage of time he was no longer on the court. It was almost a perfect 1-to-1. Ja Morant, who was wildly overlooked during Yahoo's first board, is the biggest jumper of anybody. He leapt 270 slots from 312 to number 42. Yeah, I'm not willing to take a chance on Ja. I know that makes me a sad coward. And, in his brief time last year, he was number 56. But also, this happens with Ja often. And this is not meant to be a knock on him, because the league is going to be better for having him playing this year. And I know he's got all of his other stuff going on. But Ja Morant often starts off with a frenzy of an attack. Like the field goal percent and free throw percent, always for him. When he's full strength and fully energized, he comes out and he shoots 80+% at the foul line, and he comes out and he shoots 48, 49, 50% from the field, and everything is coming up Millhouse. And then all of a sudden, the fatigue of a long season sets in, and you see the field goal and free throw taper. and everything comes off. The same kind of thing happened with De'Aaron Fox a little bit, but he buttressed that against a really big steals season. I don't know what we're going to get out of Ja this year in terms of just general overall health. Like that's not really my big concern, although it's fair to say that during his NBA career so far, at least the last 3 seasons, he's kind of played his way into injuries, some larger than others, and then the suspension was of his own volition. But, COVID years, he didn't miss that many ball games. But the years after those, he missed 25, 21, this past season, 73, but that was sort of a different monster. I don't think you can count on Ja for more than about 65, 66 games. If you get more than that, great, but I wouldn't count on it. You should look at him for 25 to 28 points per game, about a steal, 0.3, 0.4 blocks, 8 assists, 5 to 6 rebounds, and then you pray for the percentages. Pray for them, because if they're both bad, that's how he drops 30, 40, 50 slots. If one of them is even half decent, that's how he claws his way up towards this 50 mark last year that he got to in brief activity. Not surprisingly, he's going to be better in 8-cat than 9-cat. Ja's got the ball in his hands, so the turnovers are going to be there. And so 42 for 8-cat is probably okay for him. For 9-cat, he's not a guy I'm specifically targeting. And if he starts to improve his percentages, he's not really a build guy anymore either. For a while, you could just be like, yeah, you're punting one of the percentages or whatever. But you don't really know. And when I end my assessment with a player of, we don't really know about this, and this thing, that's probably a guy where I'm just like, you know what? Well, still early enough in the draft where I don't want to do that dice roll. Jalen Williams at 43, fantasy darling, moved down 1 slot. Big surprise there. And the assessment, and, Matt Lawson mentioned this the other day, and I think Dan Titus mentioned it on the show. The assessment there is that he's just not a big scorer, and so people are overlooking him. He only scored 19 points a game last season, but even a little bit more, an extra shot and a half. He's very efficient. He's at 1 1/3, basically, points per field goal attempt. And it's not because he's getting to the foul line all that often. He's just a great field goal percent guy. So he's putting up big points per possession, pretty much. Alliterative fun. Rebounds should stay somewhat similar. Assists maybe could tick up the tiniest bit. Steals and blocks are going to be good for him. We don't know exactly what they're going to be, but you can assume they're solid. And as we mentioned, he got off to a slow start this last year, and then he rolled at a top 35 clip for most of the season. So getting him here in the 40s, I'm all about Jalen Williams. You can look at his stats from the last couple of seasons where, the steals went down from 1.4 to 1.1. It could very easily go back to 1.4. Some of that's luck. You get a deflection. Does it go to a teammate, or does it go back to the team that was dribbling? Derrick White is kind of a similar monster to Jalen Williams, a guy that's just good at everything. Not going to score a ton. Jalen Williams will put up more points than White, but no Kristaps Porzingis. And, if you think White can stay healthy despite the finals run and the Olympics run, then he's a very reasonable 4th-round pick. He'll give you some points, some boards, decent assists, good steals, good blocks, good threes, good percentages. He's a Roto 9-cat darling. And so if you miss out on Jalen Williams, who's more the upside play here, you can go Derrick White, who's a little bit of the quieter one. It's hard to see him having as much in the tank this year after all the deep playoff stuff and the Olympics. But also, yes, by the way, yes, I'm sad that he moved from 53 to 44. That's annoying. He was a really nice value at 53. You could get him in the 5th round. Now you have to get him in the 4th. But he should be a 3rd rounder per game this coming year. And I do think that with Porzingis out, one of those shots goes to Derrick White. He's number 27 this last year on 11.5 shots per ball game. That's not where a lot of his value's tied up, but more is good because he's efficient, and so more is better. Franz Wagner at 45 didn't move, really. He moved down 1 slot. Still too early. I don't know what folks think we're about to get out of Franz. He was number 70 last year. Took 15 shots a game. He's behind Paolo in the pecking order. I guess the 15 could become 16, but he also wasn't as efficient as they were hoping he would be, mostly because the 3-point shot wasn't as good. His other stuff was. He's fine. There's no reason to take him in the 4th round. He's a 5th or 6th rounder, just painted all over his face for fantasy, and he's going around too soon. So, nope. Jimmy Butler at 46. Yeah, he's another old man going the other direction. Butler drops from 39 to 46, and now he kind of becomes the Kawhi Leonard. I mean, you sort of have to, don't you? On the first board, I was like, I'm probably not going to get Butler because he and Kawhi were ranked close to one another, and Kawhi was ranked later, and I think Kawhi has the better season. But Jimmy Butler, who was number 28 last year, while basically not getting defensive stats, we hope those come back a tiny bit, replicates what he was doing. Maybe the defensive stats get a little bit better. I don't know if he gets all the way back near 2. That was sort of like the high water mark. But this guy is a 3rd round per game dude at the absolute worst. And now suddenly you can get him at the end of the 4th, early 5th. To me, that's the no-brainer. You get 62 games out of him here. He's a win. Anything above that is a big win. That's the kind of risk I'm willing to take because you're drafting a dude below his floor on the per game side. Jimmy Butler's been discounted by probably 15 slots because we assume he's going to miss 18 games. And he might. He probably will. But that's a big discount. Jared Allen at number 47 is the next one. He actually moved down 7 slots, and he now is someone that I would look at because Jared Allen's probably going to be around number 40 to 50. So suddenly now, instead of having to take him at the front end of his possible value profile, you're getting him kind of in the middle to the back of it. That's cool. He's going to be very safe. He's going to rack up center minutes. He's not a big shot blocker, but he's a good percentages big man. There's a lot to like about Jared Allen. He's a top 50 range center that could go as high as 35 if things break his direction, probably be somewhere in the middle, and that's where he's getting drafted. So that one, A-okay. Before we do the last 3 names, want to remind you guys once again to please take a second to like the video. What are you doing? Why haven't you done it yet? Do it now. And if you're listening anywhere or watching anywhere, it's so fast, hit the subscribe button. Follow on Spotify. Subscribe on Apple. Subscribe on YouTube. The thing that does take time is dropping a review on Apple. Spotify is easy, by the way. If you've listened to an episode on Spotify, you can just click the rate button and hit 5 stars. You don't have to write anything. It takes 2 seconds. That's a fast one. Apple's the one that takes a second. They made it hard to figure out, I think, so that people knew the ratings were truly genuine. So you got a minute. I'd ask for your help on that one, although I understand if perhaps you don't. Back into the mix, Jalen Brown at number 48. Jalen Brown burned me last year, finished at 77 because he forgot how to shoot free throws. Son of a gun. It didn't seem like a huge drop-off, but it was. He was right around number 45-50 the year before when his free throw number was in the mid to high 70s, and that's exactly where he'll end up again if his free throw gets back into the mid to high 70s. If he sits at 70, he becomes a pretty big negative. Not huge, not Zion bad, but I also think sometimes it's understated a tiny bit, the damage that Jalen Brown did to free throws last year. 4 to 5 free throws a game at 70%. You need a good one to offset that. Steph Curry's positive foul shooting, 4.5 attempts a game at 92%, basically just wiped out Jalen Brown. That's significant. Lauri Markkanen, 5 attempts at 90%, covers up Jalen Brown. That's not what you want out of your shooting guard small forward. You want Jalen Brown back at what he was the prior year, which was not good, but, serviceable. 76.5% the year before. That's a Jalen Brown that I can make a really good case to roster near 50. This one, and I don't know what this season's going to bring. You guys heard me before. If I finish handicapping a player and there's something I'm pointing at, I'm like, I don't know what we're going to get in that category. That's a guy I generally avoid. Unless it's like, oh, maybe he's at his floor and, oh, maybe we get a bigger thing. No, with Brown, it's like, if he gets back into the mid to high 70s, then he belongs at this draft slot. If he doesn't, he belongs behind it. What if he bounces all the way up to 80% at the line this year? Well, then he's a 30-something range dude. Will he? I don't know. I doubt it. Last two names, Jamal Murray at number 49. He's another dude that needed to go down. Jamal Murray was a guy that I was hoping I would get some value on this season. Looked horrible in the Olympics, looked terrible in most of the playoffs last year because of injury. And then all of a sudden he opened up at number 35, which made no sense at all. Now he's where he should have been. I would actually consider Jamal Murray near 50 because he was number 32 per game last year. So he was quite good. Missed a bunch of time. And obviously we hope that he's healthy coming in to start this year. That's going to be a big part of it. But he's a super efficient shooting guard who gets assists as well. I mean, I guess he's the point guard there, but his game is a little bit more shooting guard-esque. So I love Jamal Murray's fantasy game right now because you guys know me and percentages. I like to attack them both. He's a guard with a high field goal percent. Is he healthy? I don't know. But if he looks okay the next time we see him, then hell yeah, I'll take him at 50 because he'll beat that per game by probably 10 to 20 slots. And then you just hope he can make it through most of the year. And finally, DeMar DeRozan moved up a little bit in the latest board shuffle from 56 to 50. And we're starting to get close to pricing him out. I hate to say it. Like, you guys know I've had DeMar DeRozan on my fantasy teams for about the last 4 or 5 years in a row. But he's going to do less this coming year. He was number 31 this last season. I had sort of baked into things about a round and a half drop-off for him, playing alongside De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis instead of in Chicago, where he was this season at least, kind of the number one guy. I don't think he's going to come into Sacramento and take over the way he did in Chicago. Just sort of jumped right over Zach LaVine, jumped, not that Vooch was like a guy that needed to have the team in his pocket, but DeMar came in and was just like, I'm the captain now. And I don't think that's happening in Sacramento. I think we see DeMar shave a shot or two off his profile, and all of his value, almost all of his value, his steals are okay, is tied up in efficient scoring. So a removal of usage is a big hurt on him. I also don't know that he's going to play 38 damn minutes a ball game. That's too much. But he did manage 79 games. The positive for DeRozan is that he's been a pillar of durability lately. And obviously, that's that until it isn't anymore. But I would assume he stays mostly upright. I'm hoping that DeMar falls back down into the late 50s, maybe closer to 60 as we get around draft season. Because at 50, I don't think there's a whole lot of value left. That's probably around where he rolls this season. So DeMar right now is about where he belongs. And that's sad to me because that makes him not a premier value. Quick recap at the end of it all. We'll do it fast here, folks. LeBron, small value. Markkanen, small value, but injury risk. He's close to it. Maxey, fair. Dejounte Murray, too early. Kawhi Leonard, still a risk I'm willing to take, even at 30. Jaren Jackson Jr., a little bit too polarizing for me. Sengun, only if you're punting free throws here is my take. And that's oversimplifying, but that's what we'll roll with. Cade Cunningham, this is kind of around his ceiling. Good 8 cat choice in this range. Jalen Johnson, kind of a fun one at 34. I like that one. Cat, Bam, very safe, 35 and 36. Paolo, points leagues. Freddie VanVleet, hell yeah, at 38, one of my favorites. Desmond Bane, fair, and Evan Mobley, fair at 39 and 40. Miles Turner, a little early at 41. John Morant, 9 cat, a little early at 42. 8 cat, this is fine. Jalen Williams, big winner at 43. Derrick White, nice winner at 44. Franz Wagner, a little too early at 45. Jimmy Butler, risk willing that I'm willing to take at 46. Jared Allen, safe at 47. Jaylen Brown, don't know what the hell the free throw is going to be. Jamal Murray, small value at 49. And DeMar DeRozan, very safe at number 50. That'll do it for 26 through 50, the second of our 4 chunks in the top 100. We'll knock out 51 through 75 at some point in the next couple of days. 76 to 100 to follow. And then, of course, the Sleepers episode. That'll be the picks after 100 on the new board, which a lot of those guys moved around a lot. So we got to redo that one, almost tear it down to the studs and do it all over again. Womp womp. We'll also have another show on steals and busts from each round. That was a fun one. Everybody enjoyed that. That's more of a search engine optimization kind of episode, but it's fun. We'll do it. We're doing 2 shows a day. In terms of what's actually coming up in the very near term, Tomorrow, Rhett Bauer on the episode. He's giving us the Joel Embiid plan. I can't wait to hear this. Seriously, I think this is going to be a lot of fun. And then later on tomorrow, that'll be when we get back into the Yahoo new board a little bit more. That'll either be the steals and busts over the weekend, or that'll be the 51 through 75. Over the weekend, we'll deal with 2 more teams from the Atlantic Division. We've done Philly and Boston, so maybe we'll knock out the 2 New York teams, or maybe we'll head to the Great White North. I haven't decided yet. Probably decide on Saturday morning before we record the episode. In the meantime, I'm Dan Vespers for Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Follow on Twitter at Dan Vespers and at Old Man Squad. Like, rate, and subscribe as you head back to your day. And we'll see you guys again soon. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Oh, and if you want, throw a comment on the YouTube video. That's a nice way to give it a little algorithm bump. Help your boy out. Okay. Later for now.